And now it's on the record, so everybody mind your P's and Q's. Okay, well, let's get rolling. Thanks to everybody, all of our partners across the country for joining us today. For the last couple of years, by the way, I'm Justin King. Nice to see you. For the last couple of years, Oregon Wineries have been getting together for this Oregon Wine Month webinar as a way of supporting each other, connecting with all of you, putting a spotlight on spring, which we really see as the season for celebrating Oregon Wine Month, kicking it off for the year. We really just hope you enjoy, and we hope you bring your colleagues with you next year. We would really like to turn this into a bit of a tradition. So we want to thank David DeWitt and Tom Danowski from the Oregon Wine Board for helping us out this year. Their fantastic work and support on this project has been really important. And I want to turn it over now to our fabulous host from Ponzi Vineyards, Carrie Kalsher.
Hi, all. Good morning. Thank you, Justin. And yes, agreed. Thank you to the whole Oregon Wine Board, especially David and Tom, who are on the call with us today. And thank you to all of our distribution partners for joining us today. We appreciate your time. As Justin said, I'm Carrie Kalsher, and I'm honored to be here today. I'm joining you on Earth Day with some of the leaders in our industry. And these folks represent a small but really important segment of Oregon's nearly 1,000 wineries now. Some of us identified some Chardonnay bud break in our warmer sites just this morning. So we're excited to be finally kicking off the 2023 season, an auspicious and wonderful start to Earth Day 2023 today. Our panelists today are David Millman from Domaine Drouhin. David. Sam Pullman from Jackson Family Wines. Robin Howell from Sokol Blosser. Mark Rutherford from Willamette Valley Vineyards. Guillaume Large from Resonance Wines, Mike Willison from Adelsheim Vineyard, Justin King from King Estate, and Louisa Ponzi from Ponzi Vineyards. Thank you all for joining us. So we're excited to share with you today what we're up to in Oregon. And it shouldn't surprise you that we're still working arm in arm to innovate, experiment, define, and strengthen our region, much like we've done for the past 60 plus years. It makes me feel so old now, right? But of course, it also sounds very young in the grand scheme of wine regions. And people are taking notice. As if Schenken were helping us plan Oregon Wine Month this year, they released an article just yesterday titled, "Oregon Wines Reach New Record High," and detailed our continuing tailwinds. We've had a growth of 3% across the industry and nearly doubling our value in under 10 years, from 471 million to nearly 900 million since 2015. Pretty exciting stuff. David is going to be popping some of these articles into the chat as we go, and we'll also be popping in some of our raffle winners. If you paid attention to some of the great goodies you'll be receiving for tuning in today, you want to pay attention to that chat as we go. If you have questions, please pop them into that Q&A, and we'll do our best to answer them here. If we can't get to them here in our small window of time, we will most certainly reach back out to you after. So, what's up in Oregon? Pinot is still king, still 60% of the state's plantings and dedicated to this flagship grape. But Oregon vintners are continuing to experiment with new varieties and styles. We're seeing some particular growth and excitement around Oregon sparkling wine and continued double-digit growth in plantings of Chardonnay. That continues to gain traction and acclaim with each passing year. We're excited to talk to you about it again here today. And Suckling just posted a story stating that Oregon produces some of the best Pinot and, with the "and" in all caps, Chardonnay in the world, underscoring that increasing affinity and awareness of our truly delicious, cool climate Chardonnay. We're continuing to experiment with other varieties as well, and we'll get into a little bit of that and having some great success there. So first, I want to kick it off with some vintage reports. A whole year has passed since the last time that we did this webinar, which means a whole vintage happened across the world. So let's do a little recap of 2022. Nothing major happened in 2022, right, Louisa? Give us a little recap of what went on.
Oh, we never have anything that happens here. It's just vintage after vintage. Now, as you all know, probably Oregon, we every vintage brings a new opportunity, let's say, for learning, and 2022 was true to that. We started off the vintage quite nice, early, beautiful spring. We were all enjoying some sunshine, and the vines were growing. We had buds out, and we were hit by a kind of unprecedented late frost, and snow event that happened April 11th. And that kind of set the stage for what was going on. We all were a bit distracted. We, as an industry, as we always do, kind of rallied the troops, listened to our experts, our pioneers, people who have been around for a while, tried to figure out, oh, what's next? How do we cope with this event? And I think for me, it was a lesson in how resilient our vines are. And, end of the day, we were delivered with a gorgeous vintage, beautiful, and actually quite bountiful vintage. So Guillaume, do you want to chime in on your perception of 22?
Yes, Rita, thank you. Yes, what was unbelievable, that was extreme of this season. You mentioned the frost and the cold month of April, but what was more unprecedented? This is what happened from end of June to end of October, meaning dry and warm summer, giving time, for the fruits to come slowly. We always the same, balance, of warm days and cool nights, bringing a slow maturation, and finally a beautiful vintage. That was impossible to imagine such quality of vintage in April or in May, and almost beginning of June. But this is Oregon. This is a place with such energy. And 22 will be really the proof of that. Balanced wine, warm vintage, but quality.
Thank you both. We didn't move here to have the same vintage year over year, did we? We moved here to capture the magic that we can capture when you farm on the edge of where grapes ripen. And we're farmers at the end of the day. We're here at the whim of Mother Nature. So it's really incredible to continue to see how this community bonds together. It speaks to that collaboration and the knowledge that can be attained in a short period of time, relatively speaking, when we all work together to make better wine in those exciting years. Well, 2021, a bit of a different story, hitting shelves right now. So we want to make sure we're supporting what you are currently selling out in the market. I'd love to have Sam Pullman give us a little rundown along with Robin Howell on how 2021 shaped up. Robin, do you want to give us a start there and kick it over to Sam?
Sure, absolutely. So 2021 was, well, those were really fun wines to make, and the vintage was a true gift after a wet 2019 and then the 2020 fires, of course. And so it was just a very cruisy, easy vintage. It's all relative. There's always challenges, but this one, relative to recent vintages, was lovely. We started out with a dry spring, one of the driest in history. And then that brought us to the end of June, where we encountered the heat dome. And although that did bring some challenges, at least for us at Sokol-Blosser, we were right at the end of bloom, so we had minimal damage. So we were very fortunate. That led to very, not as hot, but still hot and dry August, July and August. And then in September, we were gifted with some cooler days and a little bit of rain, and that just helped with bringing the fruit into balance and extending the ripening season just a little bit more. Yeah, it was just a lovely, lovely vintage. What do you have, Sam?
Yeah, a lot of the same, much like Robin said, we we're fortunate enough to have a vintage with really low disease pressure, which is not always the case here in the Willamette. But those wines, I'm sure you guys are all tasting them now, are really hitting their stride, and they were made in the vineyard. They're so pretty and feminine and light on their feet. It was definitely, all we did as winemakers was just kind of shepherd them to the bottle. And it was a really nice kind of break for us for once. So.
Yes.
Amazing. I would love to open this up to anyone else as well, and really want to underscore for everybody that we're having a conversation here. So we want this to be a little bit fun and playful. We know we're on Zoom, which limits a little bit of that interaction. But if anyone else has other thoughts on 21 or 22, or how we're going into 2023, now's the time.
Seems like more of a typical vintage this year. What do you think, David?
Oof, it's so late already. It's been very wet for those of you in the Pacific Northwest, well, anywhere on the West Coast, and well, no, I guess most of the US, it's just been a very heavy weather winter into spring. So, but that's what it is. And it makes me think, Guillaume used the word extreme, and that's correct. We've seen so many of these. It used to be that the mantra 35 years ago, 30 years ago, 20 years ago was that in Oregon, we really knew how to deal with the cool temperatures and a lot of rain. That's nothing we're afraid of. In the mid 2010s, 14, 15, 16, we really learned a lot about heat. And then in the last couple of years, as we're talking about, there are these, these sort of extreme events. It's always punctuated with the most something, the strongest winds we've seen in a century, the biggest, the first frost that we've ever had that affected the vines, or at least the first one in 40 years, the first heat dome we had and its follow-up, and these sorts of things, an ice storm in the beginning of 2022, this sort of thing. So it's I always think of us as we're all kind of surfing and not sure what the wave is underneath us, but
I heard this year
it's
going to be a meteor this year.
Is that what it is? Okay. I think there's a movie about that.
Yeah.
Mark, did you have anything to add? I saw you come off mute.
Oh, I'm just getting ready for the next section is all.
Yeah, you are gearing up. I love it.
Hey, we had a great question come in regarding post fires in 2020.
Sure.
How are the wineries recovering, and how drastically did this affect yields? If so, should we expect price increases due to lower inventories?
Oh, that's a wonderful question. I think, Justin, you might be best equipped to deal with the pricing end of this thing, but really anyone, let us know how you want to pop in. Millman, you're also equally running shows there.
Well, I think the good news, and David, please chime in. The good news is that I think a lot of the price increases have been taken already. And I think that what we're seeing now, from where I sit anyway, it's looking pretty stable in terms of pricing. Obviously, we bounced back from 2020, a rough experience, but that's kind of the Oregon way, and we supported each other the whole time as wineries together. I think to get there, so I'm really proud of how Oregon handled 2020, and but yeah, but I don't think that we're seeing any additional price increases other than what's already happened, as far as I know. But David, please.
Well, from our perspective, there was just a lot of pain. It was 2020 would have been a really great vintage for Pinot Noir. The Chardonnays and some other wines were beautiful and have been well reviewed, and they're delightful. And some people made some really good Pinot in 2020. For us, we had to declassify all of our Domaine Joran and Rose Rock Pinots, and it just hurt. And especially at a time when we do see growing interest in our wines domestically and on export markets. It's really neat. And you hate saying no to a market that's raring to go and excited and it's been building, and all of a sudden you literally miss an entire year. So unprecedented, but we're moving past it and knocking on a lot of wood.
Painful, but we knew this right going into 2021. And as Robin mentioned earlier, we had this really beautiful vintage that gave us some of that relief. And a lot of us, I know, were making wines that were ready to release a little bit earlier than perhaps we were normally producing, so that those are ready to hit the market sooner. I know we ran through a lot of wine, not making a lot of 2020, but we're ready to hit that ground running again. with you all helping us get those 2021s back on shelf and off to the races. We did have some recent breakthroughs, and I've read only a little bit about this. I'm not sure if somebody can speak a little bit more, maybe even Oregon Wine Board too. Oregon State just had some really incredible breakthroughs identifying the chemical compounds that present in wine from smoke. So that to us is this light at the end of the tunnel. You know, it was a true moving target for the industry for a very long time, and one that, you know, we've looked to other regions who deal with fires more regularly to try to solve, but really it's not been something we've been able to identify in any real chemical way. Tom, I saw you come off mute and get ready to go. Tell us a little bit more if you know a little bit about what's been happening there.
Sure, yes. As someone who was invited to leave high school chemistry, I'm not equipped at all to comment on this topic, but I will tell you that, again, that spirit of collaboration was really alive and well in this area. Oregon State, Washington State, and UC Davis research scientists all came together and are still working together with a USDA grant to understand that kind of cocktail of 13 volatile compounds that really are noticeable when fire smoke attaches, as it does, to grape skins and how to deal with it. The breakthrough that Carrie was just referring to is underscoring and kind of sort of discovering a classification of these phenols called thiophenols that are sort of the most apparent when you put wines in front of a sensory panel. And with those kind of compounds now being understood, there are now research initiatives underway to try to figure out how do you mitigate them, can you mask them, can you eliminate them? But certainly one of the tricks winemakers learned in 20 is to deal as carefully and gently as possible with wines that might have been smoke affected by getting them off the skins as soon as that's possible to minimize that. So we're a lot smarter about smoke than we used to be, and we've certainly learned, and it's good to know for the customers that you all deal with, smoke exposed isn't always smoke affected. There's a big difference there, and we've learned that, but winemakers have really bounced back well all up and down the West Coast.
Yeah, thanks, Tom. You know, as I always like to say around here, a problem identified is half solved. So we're getting there, and that's really good news for our entire industry. Thank you all. A great question to whomever asked that. So I'd like to, you know, in honor of Earth Day, let's just do a little sustainability recap. It's no new story that Oregon is known for sustainability, but one always worth revisiting because we continue to evolve and we push further into what it means to operate as stewards of the earth, stewards of our land. We're known for that for a good reason. There's more biodynamic certified vineyard land in Oregon than the rest of the US growing regions combined. And in fact, Oregon is home to the largest Demeter certified vineyard, contiguous vineyard in North America. And that honor goes to King State. My man, Justin, off in the corner there. Pretty exciting. In real pioneering fashion on the sustainability front, I just learned yesterday that Willamette Valley Vineyards has a robot, which is probably my most exciting piece of news to drop here today. Mark, can you tell us about the robot and how this is helping Willamette Valley Vineyards sustainability efforts?
Sure. Over the last couple of years, we've been teaming up with the USDA, Cornell, Oregon State, and Washington State universities to produce the first autonomous electric-powered robot used with the application of UVC light to treat and control powdery mildew. Powdery mildew is one of the most easily recognized plant diseases in Oregon. From home gardens and agriculture, there's over 1 million pounds of fungicides used every day to control, or every year to control powdery mildew. We're hoping that with this new technology that we can reduce those fungicide uses. So really excited to be developing this technology and moving forward.
It's super exciting. And I can't wait to tell everyone that you have a robot. That's going to be some good advertising, just local advertising for WVV here. Let's talk a little bit about some of the programs that we work so closely with here in Oregon. Louisa, you've worked really closely with the LIVE program for a long time. Can you fill us in on that statewide certification, some recent developments, and how we're moving forward year over year there?
Yeah, LIVE is our certified sustainable program, low input viticulture and enology is what that stands for. And hopefully you'll see it, you see it on labels. It's our biggest certifier in the Valley. And I think what's really exciting about what's going on with Live right now is just kind of the expansion of what sustainable means and how far we can take it. It's our, it's kind of in our DNA in this industry to be good to the land and responsible in our farming practices. It's always how we've done things here. But the expansion into other fields of really looking at like social justice issues, for instance, that's part of sustainability. Diversity is part of sustainability. Really looking at our winery practices and how we make wine in our wineries and how the processes there happen. What's our water use? And big one is really packaging. I mean, I think for everyone, that's kind of what we're talking about is how do we be more sustainable in our packaging? In most wineries, our bottle weights count for like 26% of our carbon footprint. It's huge. And so really looking at how we can kind of scale that back and do better in those areas. So that's what I'm excited about is kind of like, where else can we take the sustainability issues in our industry and do better?
Well, the good news is we're all asking that question year over year, and organizations like Live are continuing to push the envelope and make us think about things in a broader way. How many of you all have certified Live vineyards or your wineries are certified Live on this call? Yeah, lots. I think, Robin, you take that even a step further, and you all at Sokolblasser have become a certified B Corporation. Can you tell us a little bit more about that? Luisa was mentioning the social justice aspect of sustainability. We leave that out often when we're speaking about sustainability at a winery level. Tell us how you incorporate that at B Corp level at Sokolblasser.
Yeah, so we decided to go down the path of B Corp certification about 8 years ago. And we chose this certification because it really integrates all aspects of the business, not just our farming practices, which we've been certified organic for several years. And this takes in other aspects. So, it touches with the production team, marketing team, our sales force. It really looks at all general operations and how we care for our people, how our partners that we work with, be it distributors or packaging suppliers, how they treat their employees, how they look at diversification, and how they also treat the planet. That's one of the pillars. There's 3 core pillars for B Corp, which is people, planet, and profit. And so it's integrating a lot of aspects for very complex industries such as the winery.
It's really exciting. The B Corp situation has really come a long way here in Oregon. A to Z Wineworks became the first B Corp in Oregon in 2014. And at the time, they were the only B Corporation winery in the world. So it was a pretty big honor. And in that amount of time since 2014, we now have 9 certified B Corps and counting in Oregon, and really, proving how we're taking sustainability seriously at every level. Luisa, another thing you mentioned was the packaging weights. And Milman, I wanted to ask you, you all are working on some different packaging initiatives there at Domaine Drouhin. How have you embraced that lighter glass, and what are you doing there?
Well, thank you. We starting with the Drouhins, working with a lighter glass in Burgundy and putting almost everything they do in that particular glass. It's a Drouhin mold that they use, whether it's Musigny or Macon Village, basically the same bottle. So moving people past sort of biases about bottle weight and quality. And so we've been looking at it. We look at basically everything. And that's one piece about Live, which I really like as a program, is that it incorporates continuous improvement. So you can never rest on where you're at. You have to keep going, have to keep improving. And as Luisa mentions, glass is such a huge piece. So there's a lot of work being done. There's near the airport here, there's a glass factory. I think it's historically been used for beer, but they're now looking at doing a 400-gram bottle, which would be amazing, and a full, 20+% lighter than the current bottle. So It's all of this. It's working on everything. It's moving away from wood boxes on certain products. We reduce waste. We do a lot of things that no one will ever know, no one will ever see, but we know it's what we should be doing individually and collectively.
And, this is where we could ask for your help here, distributor partners. We know that there is a perception of some of our packaging in the industry, a perception of consumers and perception perhaps even of trade, that a heavier bottle connotes a more serious wine or a higher end wine. And we really need some partner help as we move away from those things into what is really a more sustainable business model all across the board for the wine industry, in helping people see why that's really important and changing, that narrative in the nation for us. Thank you all very much. A lot of great work being done at each and every one of your wineries. I encourage everyone to check a little bit more deeply into people's sustainability practices. I think you'll be surprised to see just how many of us are doing all of these varied and wonderful things for the earth. So happy Earth Day. Let's move on to some of the wines and varieties that are gaining that ground and attention, some of the new things. Hot on everyone's tongues right now is Oregon sparkling wine. That's come quite a long way. And although wineries like Argyle and perhaps Soder have been to varying degrees championing that sparkling for quite a while, there's been a recent market increase in that sparkling production here. We've had some recent investment from champagne houses Henriot with the Beaufrere partnership, and of course, Bollinger here at Ponzi. And while I don't have solid production numbers to share, I can say that we now have more than 50 producers of sparkling in the Willamette Valley alone, not to say the whole state even. And one of our foremost custom sparkling producers, it's a difficult animal to make some sparkling wine, different process than regular still wine production. Andrew Davis, he's gone from 8 clients and 3,200 cases in 2013 to over 40 clients and 40,000 cases of production today. So again, less than a decade, we are really ramping up the interest in sparkling production. I'd like to turn this over to Mike. We haven't heard from you yet today. You're out in the market regularly. How are the trade reacting to Oregon sparkling wines? And what do you see as our particular strengths in this arena in Oregon?
Thanks, Gary. Hi, everybody. We are very good at this as a region, and it's surprising to many people whose experience has been limited to 1 or 2 wines from 1 or 2 producers. And I think there's something really exciting and revelatory about it, quite frankly. We are so good at it right now in this state that the range is beyond comprehension in a lot of ways, from really fun, lively, canned wines that are sparkling with other flavors addition to top tier Blanc de Blanc that could rival some of the finest bottles in the world. And I think there's something really exciting about it. I think people are shocked, first of all, by the quality, but then take a step back and kind of look at it and say, well, wow, yeah, of course that makes sense. You're growing Pinot Noir and Chardonnay at the highest level in the world. So I've been really pleased with the reception. I know there's a lot of sparkling producers on this call. We make 4 distinct sparkling wines at Adelsheim, from a Blanc de Blanc to a Brut Rosé to a Demi as well. And people have been truly thrilled. I think it goes towards, again, something we've been talking about on this call, and we definitely try to hammer into people's heads, is that we all work together so nicely. And whether it's with Andrew's company, or the way we're all talking about sparkling wine together to make ourselves smarter, to make the wines more lovely, or to the types of tastings that we all have together, technical tastings about Chardonnay and Pinot Noir, and discovering new ways to play and bring our wines to the people. We're just developing these things together. And so when we talk about the quality of Oregon sparkling, it's not just sparkling anymore. It's all of it. And it's really been a wonderful stretch, a wonderful new thing that I've seen in the market very successfully.
Couldn't agree more. How many of you on the call are producing sparkling right now? Boom. It's coming for you, nation. Super small production across the board. Again, not an easy thing to produce, and a little bit of a different process, as you're all well aware from still wine. Sparkling is a huge investment at Willamette Valley Vineyards. You just built an entire domain just for sparkling. Mark, tell us a little bit about Domain Willamette.
Well, we're very excited about the opening of Domain Willamette. It's been 6 years in preparation for this new facility. It is located at the biodynamically farmed Bernot Estate Vineyard. We're really just excited as we're ramping up these sparkling wines, 4 distinct sparkling wines. We have Blanc de Blanc, Blanc de Noir, Brut, and Brut Rosé, and we're just really excited as we continue to develop these wines and they start hitting the marketplace that we're showing and representing the Oregon industry on a level of sparkling wine that is on par with the great champagnes. So we're excited about that.
Robin, we were talking yesterday about how this has sort of changed your approach to winemaking and made you kind of expand your knowledge and your learnings on how to be a winemaker, because it is such a different process. Can you tell us a little bit about how this has diversified your portfolio there at Sokolblosser and what this has done for you as a winemaker?
Yeah, I'm very excited about integrating this into our winemaking and our sales portfolio. We're now up to about 4,500 cases that we just finished putting into Tirage this past week. And it's just a different way to approach grapes that we are very familiar with, Pinot Noir and Chardonnay in particular. There's nothing to hide behind. When you're making sparkling, every bubble pronounces every flaw. And so you have to be very, very focused, very diligent when making sparkling. And those lessons that I've learned from making sparkling base cascade right into making still wine. And so I think ups the quality of our still wine production in the Valley as well. It's just another way to look at the grapes, and it's another way to look at our vineyard sites. I know for us on our sites, we're growing lovely Pinot, but some just make more compelling still wine, and some of those sites that aren't as rich and deep for wine production or still wine production make beautiful sparkling base. So I think it's helped diversify what's going on in our vineyard as well, and really taking every site to the top level.
Thanks, Robin. All right, well, sparkling, pretty exciting. Anyone else want to talk about sparkling? I think I just want to pinkies up it's Friday, right? We'll have some sparkling in our hands by the end of the day today. Well, talking about the varieties, then more specifically than wine styles that we're still talking about at the tip of our tongue, Chardonnay leads the charge here right now. It's currently the 3rd most planted variety. It's about 7% of what we do, but really, planted at double digits right now. So you're going to see that coming up in big ways in the coming years. And to give you an idea of currently where we stand in Chardonnay plantings and just how far we have to go, we have a quarter of what is planted in just Chablis, which itself is only 27 square miles. So across a 3.4 million acre property in just the Willamette Valley, consider that size differential and just how far we have to go. So those styles that you're seeing coming out right now and that momentum that you're seeing with Chardonnay, that's going to be amplified year over year as we continue to, I think, become the forefront of cool climate Chardonnay production. I'd like to really go into Guillaume right away here as I make a bold statement like that. Guillaume is from Pouilly-Fuissé. Can you tell us a little bit about how our cool climate Chardonnay differs from your homeland and where you see Chardonnay going here in the Willamette Valley or here in Oregon at large?
Sure, with pleasure. In Pouilly-Fuissé, we have limestone. For sure, we don't see limestone in the Willamette Valley, but we have 3 main soil, volcanic, sedimentary, and loess. What brings a mosaic of terroir, a diversity about the terroir, and working very well with the Chardonnay. You know, the minerality, the expression of the rock works especially well in the Willamette Valley. So for sure, it's a great variety that will be more and more visible in the market due to the complexity and the quality of the wine. There is a balance. There is an energy that moves forward the Chardonnay that is very promising. So we have planted 40 acres of Chardonnay in Yamhill Carlton, Dundee Hills, and Yeola Amity Hills, AVA for resonance, organic certified and dry farm, to try to have a true expression of each place. And I can tell you, for what I have seen from the plantation, so 2016, it's very promising due to the diversity of this Chardonnay. So, voilà, amazing.
Merci.
De rien.
Louisa, I want to turn this over to you. Your family was instrumental in helping plant Chardonnay, not only in the very early days in 1970 when the Ponzis first planted, but Chardonnay was among the first plantings that David Lett had. I mean, this goes back to our original history, and yet we're only just starting to see that groundswell and that interest out in the nation and people taking hold. A lot of things had to come a long way, right? The taste in Chardonnay certainly needed to elevate and get there to what we grow. But I'd love to hear, you know, you came back from your time in Burgundy and really planted a flag for your own winemaking style with Chardonnay at the lead. Give us a little history of Chardonnay for you and, you know, how you've seen this grape evolve from the very early days.
Yeah, it's true. My family's been continuously making Chardonnay for the last 3-4 years. Now, that's unusual in Oregon. A lot of people were making Chardonnay originally and then stopped making Chardonnay and turned to Pinot Gris and other varietals to fill that. But we've had this real conviction that Chardonnay, this is the place for Chardonnay. There is no question. You know, we've proven it with Pinot and we've now proven it with Chardonnay. Personally, you know, there were lots of challenges along the way. I'm not saying we made great Chardonnay for every one of those vintages, that's for sure. And I think my father would say the same. He was not super proud of the Chardonnays he was making. And a lot of that was due to the clonal selection that they started with. And that was really just how things played out. You know, Pinot, we started with a great clone of Pinot Noir. Chardonnay, not so great. And so for a long time, there was some struggles with trying to attain the quality that we knew we could with Chardonnay. And it wasn't until, you know, late 80s, David Adelsheim did a lot of work of bringing in some clonal selection that was really way more appropriate for what we needed here with our climate. And that coincided, yes, with my time in Burgundy coming back, and I had the great pleasure to try lots of great white Burgundies, and my head was turned and thought, wow, why aren't we doing this in Oregon? This is crazy. So that started my real passion for trying to produce Chardonnay that rivaled that of Burgundy. Of course, it's a different style. We have different expressions. It is Oregon. But I think where we are today, watching this kind of historical, you know, path of Chardonnay here, we are making world-class Chardonnays. I think everyone knows it. You can see the scores. You can taste the wines. They are out in the market. It's kind of in your hands now to go sell it, tell the world, and really, you know, push that varietal, because I think people are always so stunned and amazed by how gorgeous these wines are and what a true expression of Chardonnay there is here in the Willamette Valley. So.
One of my absolute favorites. Well, you know, speaking of you know, the difference there with Guillaume and Pouilly-Fuissé, we have some others on the call that work with whose companies and themselves work with fruit from other regions. And Millman, you all know how to produce Chardonnay there at Drew, and this is something that's in the family blood forever. I'd like to hear from you, and then I'm just giving you a warning, Sam. I'm coming for you and the California differential between Chardonnay there and here with La Crema. So gear up. But David, I'd love to hear, you know, how the Drouin family feels about Chardonnay and what the buy-in there is for you.
Well, historically for the family, it's always been important. The Maurice Drouin, who took over for Joseph Drouin in 1918, when he subsequently bought Clos de Mouche parcels and understood historically that Claude Amouche had Pinot and Chardonnay planted side by side originally. He then embarked on that path. And so we know that Pinot and Chardonnay can hit the same heights. They do in Burgundy, they do elsewhere. So like Louise is saying, there's always an expectation that Chardonnay could be pretty magical here. It did take a lot of work. It did take really fine tuning what was right for Oregon specifically. And the Drouhin arrival in 1987 was just ahead of that. So we actually got our first Chardonnay cuttings in 1990 and started planting and started planting and learning. We were excited when we bought the Rose Rock Vineyard that it already had Chardonnay planted, and that's been pretty terrific. But also, the Chardonnay has been a real magnet for a lot of young winemaking talent that is coming to Oregon now, maybe not to make Pinot, but to make Chardonnay. There are a number of people who have planted vineyards that are almost entirely Chardonnay. We're about 90% Pinot, 10% Chardonnay. There are people who are the exact opposite, and that's where their excitement lies. And you see that energy, and it's like, wow, okay, love it. You know, we have an international Pinot Noir celebration. We have an international Chardonnay celebration. So the excitement around it is really palpable.
Agreed. Sam, how much Chardonnay are you all making there at La Crema Jackson family?
So La Crema in California is making quite a bit, obviously. And it's actually been a really fun opportunity for us up in the Willamette Valley to kind of teach our California colleagues that La Crema in Oregon is going to be very different from La Crema in California, as are all of our wines in the portfolio for Jackson family. And it's been kind of a learning curve, to be totally honest, with our team down there, because they're so used to, like, you know, those ripe and plush, and, you know, we're going at it and saying, okay, we're going to have minerality, we're going to have acid, and it's a different ball game. And it's something that we're really excited about. And actually, thankfully, so I'm happy to announce it. We are relaunching a La Crema Willamette Valley after kind of going back and forth, and finally, you know, really got our brand team on board with, like, there's something really exciting and everybody else is doing it. And we're showing you, like, all of our industry partners up here are doing amazing jobs, and we want to be part of that. And it's something I'm really excited to kind of, again, get back on board with.
You heard it here first, folks. Well, this is the reason to tune into these things. Everybody starts telling you their next stage steps. You're the first in the industry to know. That's pretty exciting. Well, what else is being produced? So you've heard about sparkling and Chardonnay. You know, I know, Justin, you all have gone pretty full bore into Sauvignon Blanc in your estate vineyard as well. You know, how much of that are you producing? And tell us a little bit about how that grape shows up in Oregon.
Yeah, thank you very much, Carrie. And I wanted to mention that I noticed Stacy from the Oregon Wine Board is on here supporting us as well. I didn't see her earlier. Hi, Stacy. Thanks for being here. Yeah, so I will say we also produce of course a Method Champenois sparkling, Chardonnay, Pinot Noir, Pinot Meunier from the estate, as well as a Chardonnay, and I just can't say enough about the beauty of Oregon Chardonnay. I mean, I know I'm biased as hell, but it is the most beautiful style of Chardonnay, and I got to thank Louise and Ponzi's family for their pioneering work that they did to kind of help bring that, you know, into the state. Sauvignon Blanc is a really exciting variety from Oregon. There's not a lot of it. There's maybe around 100 acres of it planted roughly across the state. It's the only wine we make in the King Estate brand that isn't a Willamette Valley AVA. It's an Oregon AVA because we have to source from the entire state to get enough to distribute it. It's currently the only, it's just a couple thousand, you know, 2,000 to 3,000 cases every year. So we're currently the only nationally distributed Oregon Sauvignon Blanc, but we really think that Oregon has the capacity to do a lot more with Sauvignon Blanc. We see it as a really fun sort of new adventure for us. Like, we had Pinot Gris initially was kind of our thing, and it is our thing, and now I think Sauvignon Blanc is really going to be an exciting piece. But it's going to be a build. it's going to be a while. But I just want to say, you know, just generally, everybody on this call is making absolutely fabulous wines. I mean, truly world-class wines, and the value to the customer is just huge. I think Oregon wines just super over deliver for the price on the shelf. in terms of how they're made. I mean, everybody on this call, you talk about the sparkling program, they're doing it the right way. You know, everybody's kind of trying to bring their absolute best to the winemaking in Oregon. And I think we're really just an exciting region. Again, I know I'm pretty biased, but I hope everybody, you know, who's tuned in from distribution will, you know, pull some of these wines, have a glass of it, taste for yourself, because these wines are truly incredible. Looks like David's got a thought.
Well, just to pick up on what you're saying about excitement and to circle back, Carrie, you said at the beginning that James Suckling had come with, you know, these great reviews. And I remember when he first came to Oregon, I think it was 2016, the first time he came to meet with producers. And he said, you know, I was coming to the US, he's based in Hong Kong. I wanted to see a region. So I asked my team, where should we go? Like someplace else in California, like what, you know, what would be interesting? And uniformly, he has a group of tasters who come with him, and he said they uniformly said Oregon, go to Oregon. That's where it is, which was wonderful to hear, of course. But that's what got him up, and ever since he's been a champion. And it's neat to see, you know, someone like Jem Dunnock appoint Audrey Frick to come review, and to see her excitement around these wines and on and on. So excitement would be the word.
It's some of the best wine in the world. It's not going to break your bank, which is incredible. I mean, I just think that it's we're in a really exciting stage right now. But anyways, yes, I mean, Sauvignon Blanc, we're excited about it. And, you know, it's not Marlborough, it's not Sancerre, it's Oregon. And it's just a beautiful style. So I think we'll see more of that, I hope, from others as well, as it sort of grows and evolves across the state. Thanks, Gary.
Thanks, both. We had a question that sort of feeds into this, that really referenced sparkling again, and you sort of answered it in your response, Justin. The question was, is anyone planting Pinot Meunier to support sparkling? And yeah, for sure, right? Justin's doing that. Robin's doing that at Sokol Blosser. Anyone else planting or using Pinot Meunier? Sam? Yeah, that's something that's definitely happening. We're seeing that traditional champagne blend being used for a lot of our sparkling wines. And
doesn't
of course,
Irie has a Pinot Meunier that they've had from the beginning. They bottle a still wine, I believe.
Yeah, they do on its own. Exactly. What else? I know, Mike, you're pretty tapped into the overall region. Is there anything else that's coming or exciting that feels like people should know about from our partners that maybe aren't on this call?
Well, it is kind of interesting because you know, if you look at if I look inwardly at Adelsheim, right, we're very heavy in Pinot Noir and Chardonnay. We make just a very small amount of Pinot Blanc still and a very small amount of Syrah, but that certainly wasn't always the case. Just the other day, I was looking through a box of old labels, and right, we were like so many other producers in the Willamette Valley in the 70s, producing Cabernet and Merlot and any number of unusual things like Riesling still labeled Johannesburg. Amongst other things. And as we began to find focus, as new clonal material became available to us, as all of the work that all of these wineries have done in cooperation with Oregon State University and OWRI, and finding out what the right material is to grow here became more refined, and we were leaning in less on places like UC Davis, but really internally leaning on each other and our own research. I think we sort of went from a lot of varieties down to very few varieties. And now we're seeing that expansion yet again, as people are leaning into more, you know, some Alpine varieties. You're seeing more and more very unusual, hard to pronounce, not for Guillaume, but for us, hard to pronounce varieties from Arbois and other. I think a real strength of ours has always been Riesling, and certainly Gruner Veltliner as well. There's lovely Gruners being produced in this valley, tremendous, in fact. And I think a real eye-opener to many producers with slopes that were commonly thought of as being to the wrong aspect, or soils that were maybe not exactly what somebody was calling ideal. Chenin Blanc has been a real eye-opener to many people. There's not a lot of it planted, but there's a lot of it being asked for. So I think the world is kind of our oyster right now, as long as we continue to focus on quality, A, and B, on appropriateness. And everybody here always seems to know that you're supposed to ask the question, right? Just continually ask these questions. Will that work for me? How would that affect our business? What piece of that can I apply at Adelsheim or at Jackson Family or at DDO? And we know that they do this. We continue to do this. I'm always impressed by our neighbors and friends with the level of experimentation that we have, and whether it's a little block of a different type of pruning or a little block of a different variety grown in a slightly different way, those experiments and then the way we discuss them after winning or losing or somewhere in between, the way we discuss them together is what really strengthens this collective us. So yeah, I think you'll see some unusual varieties. I think you'll see people going, oh, no, we're not making that anymore. We're making it like this. So I guess the world is kind of, every time it gets smaller and we're like, oh no, we're super laser focused on Pinot Noir, we all of a sudden realize that we could be making lovely sparkling wines, or we could be making some other iteration that we haven't even discovered yet.
Well, that goes back to our pioneering status, right? This is the thing that underscores all of it, that we're continuing to do that exploration. We're continuing to do that experimentation, all with the mind, of course, that everything we produce be of the highest quality and truly representative of Oregon as a region, premium, terroir driven, and varietally correct wines. Justin, yes, please jump in.
I couldn't help jumping back in, but I just had to say, yeah, Mike, I mean, there's no innovation without experimentation, right? Mm-hmm. And then to your point, now how we communicate to each other about that's so amazing. But I just want to also kind of throw a quick note out for, some of the kind of skin contact and interesting wines that are happening in some of the smaller vineyards primarily, but like places like Fossil and Fawn, places like Antiquum.
Teutonic.
Yeah, I mean, doing some really beautiful and exciting kind of the natural wine thing, but that kind of skin contact, low filtration thing, and there's some really beautiful stuff coming out of Oregon on that front too. So that's another innovative area right now, I think, for us.
Yeah, and I was just also going to point out that we're in the Willamette Valley. We think about Pinot and Chardonnay all day long. When you head to the Rocks and you look at a world-class winery like Cayuse, which is in Oregon. And that's Syrah and Grenache that is at the highest level, and other you go to the south and you see producers like Troon doing such exciting work. So there's a lot around the state, and going to what Mike was saying about you have to find what's appropriate for you, what you're excited about, and what actually works where you are. But there's a lot to discover still, so that's which is great.
I see what you did there with Cayuse. That was clever, David.
See?
It's worth noting, right? I mean, we talk a lot about the Willamette Valley because most of our wineries are centered here, but there are some really exciting things going on in our other regions, and more exciting grape varieties planted on those to those warmer sites in Walla Walla, which we share as an AVA with Washington. You hear about it in Washington often. The Rocks District. Pretty unique soil types. And then down into Southern Oregon, Cowhorn is, a pretty unique favorite down there, everything done biodynamically. That was recently purchased. So a lot of excitement building outside of the Willamette Valley as well. Yes, Mike.
There's a question in the chat about different AVAs and the terroirs and what varieties are suited best to each one. And I think I can kind of answer it, and I know that you can too. There's ongoing projects in every AVA that many of us are a part of, called neighborhood projects, where we're trying to identify what grows best in what part of what AVA, distilling it down to city block size chunks of those AVAs. So while we don't have definitive answers for you right now, we are constantly looking at the what and the where, and to try and give you that information and provide it in terms of AVA or sub AVA or new sub AVA information.
Thanks, Mike. Thanks for monitoring that chat for us.
Speaking of the chat, just to make sure, remind folks, check the chat to see if you've received anything in the raffle. That's been ongoing the whole time. So just to make sure people don't miss that.
You don't want to miss it. We've got some great magnums that we've all provided for you here. So let's talk about that excitement briefly. We're coming to the end of this, but you've heard a lot about some of the acquisitions that have been happening, and really you can't look at your news ticker in a month and not see a couple of really big things going on. So our Oregon succession, the planning was once discussed generationally, and certainly we have a couple of representations of that in Louisa Ponzi and Justin King here on the call. But that model is, of course, changing. It's still in action, but we're starting to see some new outside investments, and that has ramped up quite a bit in the last decade. We have had some really incredible and almost jaw-dropping acquisitions, and those things bring us new capital for innovation, fresh perspectives from other regions, and all of that notoriety or acclaim rather that come along with those kinds of things. So just some highlights. We have Guillaume on the call. Jadot bought and built Resonance. Jackson Family has purchased Willackenzie and Penner Ash here and establishing their own operations as well. Bollinger bought Ponzi in 2021. The Constellation acquisition of Lingua Franca happened last year. That was a big one. We've seen outside investment from Italy and Santa Margherita buying Rocco. We've had St. Michel from Washington purchase the large A to Z Wineworks. That was a massive acquisition, and we've really seen a lot of that groundswell coming from all of that excitement. Recently, we saw the Time article that came out. I hope you all had a chance to see that. David will pop a link to that in the chat, where Time Magazine identified the Willamette Valley as one of the 50 best places for 2023. And really the first line, I mean, we loved it here at Ponzi, was the wine world gasped when Bollinger purchased their first maison outside of France in Ponzi. So that was something that, they noted, put us on the map, but we've really been going strong in this department with some really key players coming in from the outside. And some important things. Sam, please tell us, a little bit about that outside investment from the Jackson family perspective, and give us an understanding of how you've assimilated into Oregon and what you're doing with these properties now.
Yeah, I think one thing that's really important to note is when Barbara Banke, who is the proprietor of Jackson Family, and we're moving into the next generation of that family-owned business, when she decided to make her first purchases with some land acquisitions up here, she very much was doing it because she had the utmost respect for those world-class wines that were already being produced up here, and really came in looking to cultivate and work with the community and, respectful of the homegrown talent that we already had. And so one of her biggest, I guess, assets within the Willamette Valley is working with Eugenia Keegan, who's been, around the valley for many, many years and is a big champion of the Willamette Valley for Jackson Family, to them, to the enterprise, I guess. And then conversely, out in the market, she is, all day drumming, beating the drum about Willamette Valley and everything that's coming out of here with her partner, David Adelsheim. But most of the team that actually works for Jackson Family in Oregon is from Oregon. I have only worked in Oregon, and our farming team planted actually the vineyards that we ultimately acquired, but it's really been, something where, it wasn't like we were coming in and gonna do it our way. We don't make wine by committee. It was very much like, hey, we know these people, we can talk over the fence. I can go over to Gina and ask to try the clone 352 that I don't have, that I want, and over at Adelsheim, and it's very much still community focused and nothing has changed. We're just able to provide some resources to our industry partners that maybe they don't always have, being some of the smaller wineries, which has been kind of cool because we're the first to share and say, come over and taste what I did. So
totally. David Millman, tell us, 70% of the wineries are under 5,000 cases. How do you think these larger companies coming in are helping push that ethos that all ships rise with the tide?
Ooh, good way to put it. I think a lot of what you're seeing is their excitement as, winery concerns of all kinds of sizes. And, there's some other purchases. I was thinking about Silver Oak buying Dickie Rass home and starting a Toomey up here, Quintessa, Benton Lane. So there are a series of these events in the last 10 years. And I think it's just a sign of respect for what's happening. When the Durans bought land in Oregon in 1987, it was part of it was sort of insane that they would do this because the harvests are at the same time. It's one family having to do both, but it really was the community and the spirit that was here, that was established. There were only 65 wineries at the time, but they just thought this community is so tight and they're so welcoming, and that's still the case. And I would think that Barbara Banke would say the same thing. I think the Gage family and with Jetto and I would say the same thing. We were welcomed and people were glad we're here, and how do we help? And in fact, that's kind of what I always say to people that buy here in Oregon. I hope you enjoy what it is to have an Oregon business, because it's different. It's not the same feeling, and it's really lovely, and don't miss it.
True. Well, thank you all. I know we could go on and on about this topic, and we can, because every year something new and exciting like this happens. And we've really seen only positivity come from these outside investments. So I'm sure it'll be a topic for next year's webinar, and we can make it the top of the hour and go right into it then. We'd be happy to answer any further questions. If you have them, please send them on to the Oregon Wine Board, to specifically David DeWitt. If you have email, hopefully you got that in the webinar invite. And if not, you can find those contact pieces on the Oregon Wine Board site. We'd be happy to continually answer your questions as you go and support all the work you're doing out there in the nation. Thank you so much. David, I'd like to turn it over to you. I know you have an incentive trip to give people.
Yeah, we sure do. Great job, Carrie. Thanks to all the panelists, and also for everybody joining this call in celebration of Oregon Wine Month. And in that spirit, the Oregon Wine Board wants to throw out an incentive. We want to hear about all your successes this spring, and we want to reward a deserving salesperson and a spouse or significant other to come to Oregon for IPNC in 2024. In the chat, I put our toolkit. You will be able to find a submission form in there for this very qualitative, fun incentive. We just want to hear about your successes out there selling Oregon wine, whether it be on-premise or off-premise. And we just look for your participation and want to build this thing moving forward. Thank you so much for joining us. If there's any other additional comments or questions, we're happy to do it, but we really appreciate your time. And thanks again.
Thank you, David. And Carrie, amazing job. Thank you so much.
Hey, thanks, Justin. It was great talking with you all today. I'll see you all in person soon, I'm sure.
Absolutely.
Bye, everybody. Happy Earth Day.
Thanks, y'all. See ya.
Thank you.